Sie dürfen sich entspannen. Ich bin zwar Journalistin, ich stelle hartnäckige Fragen, aber nie solche, die nicht beantwortet werden können. Und es sind ja nicht die SRF-Kameras, sondern die Kameras hier im Saal. Und was hier besprochen wird, ist hier für den Saal gedacht. Mario Greco, as a group of CEOs, Zurich Insurance Group, you recently said, let me quote this, on the topic of sustainability, we can no longer expect the responsibility to fall on our political leaders alone. Business leaders must step up and take action. How do you define Zurich's role in this question?
So first of all, let me apologize with everybody because I'm the reason now we switched to English. Sorry for that. My German comprehension is good enough to understand what Sandra was saying before, what you just said, but it's not to respond to your question. So apologies for that, and I hope you're not upset with me for this. Look, I think the problem we're facing is that we're heading into something that we don't know what it is. Because on one side, we need a lot of energy. Because we're using a lot of energy. AI is using, scale factors of the energy we used before. And we will use more and more of this AI energy. We have a world which is connected. And this connectivity sucks energy. But we produce energies in ways that destroy the planet. And we don't know how to move into something which is sustainable for the planet. This is a massive reconversion. And it will need technologies that we don't have yet today, technologies that are growing but not ready. And it will need a lot of investments and a lot of transformation. In the meantime, I think our best role as insurers is to help our customers to muddle through, because this is what it is. We need time, and we need to adjust our lives with the help of time. And so a lot of what we're doing today is about resilience, building resilience into the system. The weather is changing for worse. The weather is not going to get any better. And we have seen that already, and this is just the beginning of it. So we need to help prepare the society for weathering this, for surviving to this. And this will become heat waves, this will become flooding, this will become unusual events like the hail storms that we have experienced over the past few years. Fixing after it doesn't really work because the damages are made. So our efforts are much more on prevention and on building resilience into the system. Now, as your question was, I don't think we can just leave it to politicians. This is just too big. They don't know what to do. Also, all of us, we all have a multi-year perspective on this world, right? Politicians have a very short, narrow vision of the world because they have to survive up to next election. Now, Switzerland might be a different case in the story because they last much longer. But outside of Switzerland, politicians have 3 to 5 years. That's the very narrow horizon. You don't do much in 3 to 5 years. And this is also why they're not very much engaged into these kind of issues because they go beyond their responsibilities. And so we need to drive ourselves, all of us, all of you. And this is what we have been doing at Zurich, to do whatever we can to help our customers, going through all these difficult days, as smooth as possible.
You were talking about a lot of difficulties. In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges at the moment?
I think the biggest challenge, and Michael can say much more than I can because he's much more competent on this, is that we don't have the technology to overcome this situation. As I said, we need a lot of energy. We can't live without energy. The idea that we go back and we don't use it, or the idea that we will not be mobile anymore because mobility consumes energy, that doesn't work. I mean, humanity goes forward, not backward. We can't do that. So where is the technology that allows us to, in a clean way, respect the planet, but continue to live the life that we have built for ourselves over the last decades, if not centuries? I think this is the biggest challenge. We don't have it yet, and we urgently need that.
Michael Halbherr, as a CEO of LBB e-mobility, you are strongly committed to, of course, to sustainable mobility. Now, the mobility sector is a major contributor to global CO2 emissions, mostly caused by combustion engines. Where do you see the most, impactful solutions, the innovations?
Yeah, I think we need to kind of take the 25% of the total energy consumption being mobility into pieces. Mm-hmm. Okay? So of the 25% that global energy consumption is in mobility sector, and I think it correlates quite well with emissions, about 70% is road traffic, right? The remaining 30% split about equally between marine and aviation. I think when it comes to the road traffic, and I discussed this before with Stefan, I think it's clear it's going to go electric. It's not going to go hydrogen for whatever reason, but I will come to that in a second. It has to go electric. But then again, when you look at this, we have to go and replace hundreds of millions of cars. Mm-hmm. So whatever politicians believe, you can't just throw assets away. They're on balance sheets. One of the biggest challenges we're facing right now in the EV adoption is that EV cars don't have a second-hand value. So they're being kicked out of car fleets. They're kicked out of car rentals, which is a big part of the demand. Mm-hmm. So even a company, right, I just had recently a meeting with the CFO of Porsche, and Porsche is used that the Porsche, when you buy it, increases in value and not decreases. Not quite true with the Taycan, right? So people say, hey, is this mature? So the technology is not mature in the EV side, right? That's one element. Then I think we have struggled massively in getting the charging solutions out. Right? Charging today is an adventure. It's not a proper experience. So I think this is what we're facing on the EV side, but we're just starting with trucks, right? An average EV charges with 70 kilowatts. You don't have to know what that exactly means, but the truck is 20 times the power. So
20 times?
20 times.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about 1.5 megawatts to actually charge a truck, and the truck has to be charged continuously, right, as it goes through its daily route. And if a truck can't charge, the whole logistics systems breaks down. So the reliability of the systems, the systematic approach, rather complex. So let me get to the last 30%, which is marine and aviation. It's not going to go electric, right? Most people, I just give you two numbers. To get the same amount of energy you get on gas or hydrogen, you need 100 times the volume on a battery that you need on gas because of the energy density that a liter of oil or whatever has, 100 times. Right? The weight is 150 times. For the same amount of energy, you need 150 times the weight. That doesn't work for airplanes. It will not work for marine. That means in those cases, we either have biofuels or even traditional fuels and offset it, maybe cheaper than actually trying to have a technology that works. And then hydrogen will play a role. So I think what we need to do quickly, because it will take 10, 15, 20 years, we need to move consumption to electric, right? And with Mario, of course, if the production of electric is not clean, then we don't win. But that's a faster problem to solve, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Than actually going to do the 20 years of car replacement for consumption.
So how does your engagement for e-mobility, or in this case, align with your engagement in Zurich's board of directors?
Well, I enjoyed the road that we are taking at Zurich when it comes to sustainability and taking sustainability really, really serious. I sometimes joke that our sustainability report became bigger than our financial report, but we're really taking this serious. And I do believe that, I make the joke, as a young engineer, I fled the country because my first customer at BCG was actually an insurance company. So I said, okay, the last thing I want to do is work for insurance. That's why my colleagues wonder what I'm doing on the board of Zurich. But I have come to appreciate very much the role of insurance, right? I've discussed this several times with Mario. Insurance has a societal role to play, right? Because it induces, rules. What we're doing at Zurich, for example, when it comes to practices to help our customers to actually, go through the transformation, right? And I do learn a lot, right? I'm in the middle of this process. I fly in 2 weeks again to China. They're way ahead of us, right? The Chinese EV market is bigger than Europe and North America together. They're selling EV cars for $10,000, Of course, government helps a bit, but still very, very cheap. So they're committed to this, also from a societal perspective. So you learn a lot. You see a lot also in the US, how they do it completely differently. I'm always surprised that the US has become more federal than the European Union. So the Floridians don't care what the Californians are doing, much less than the Germans what the French are doing. Deglobalization, so all that complexity of handling it. Yep. And last but not least, I'm with Mario. I always make the joke, right? We need less lawyers and ideologies and more engineers and more plans. We lack a plan, right? And I think it's slowly emerging.
But I think we need to talk about politics a little bit. The European Union, you mentioned it, wants to ban combustion engines. Now, after the European election, it's not that clear anymore how strictly it's going to be. How do you judge the current situation of the mobility revolution? Are we facing a pushback maybe?
Yeah, we do face a pushback. And, I have been part of many early stage industries. And most people have never seen an early stage industry. They're in very established industries and they think a little bit here and there will change things. Certain things take time. You can't accelerate it with subsidies. What you get is when you blow a lot of subsidies into the markets, and I discuss it with German politicians quite a bit, you get basically an oversupply, subsidies disappear, and then many companies go bankrupt because the system is not stable. So I'm not a fan of these come-and-go subsidies. We need rules. And second, I think politicians, if you ask them, they can't tell you how we get the 2030 target or the 35 target. It's just a target. It just sounds great, right? Like, we're going to put 5,000 DC chargers in the ground. That's something you can campaign on. I think in the end of the day, for me, it was always clear that they will have to relax that because it's not possible. Last point, I think for it to really work, it has to be market-based. I'm convinced electric cars are better than combustion. They're simpler to maintain. They're also going to be cheaper. They go faster. They accelerate. Everything is perfect, right? So I think the electric car has to prove itself. Of course, a bit of guardrails from the government is helpful, but we cannot win by forbidding the combustion. Yeah. And there's a big part in the rest of the world which will maybe not go as quickly to electric as we do. I prefer them having clean German combustion cars than something else. So I think we need to have a very balanced view on this. I'm not a big fan of forbidding. I feel that a bit of guardrails and putting a bit more penalties on the combustion based on the emission is fine, but I think these strict targets, they will not happen.
What's your perspective?
No, I fully agree on this. And the economic incentives don't work. Today, why would people shift from a less expensive normal combustion car to an EV car, which costs them more and then has no secondary value? Why would people pay that? And so we're still in the middle of this, and especially the European approach is to force with low solutions. But you can really do that, and the time will come, but it's not today. We need time to adjust to this and to understand it better. Can I also stress a point for all of you as investors or people managing with investments? I think, summing up the story that or the market I see today is you have the investment for this transformation, then you have the investment to reconfigure the supply chain, because the supply chain that we organized over the past 30 years is not acceptable anymore. It has too many political risks for all of us and has proven not to work in crisis moment. And so we need to restructure that. And then there is the third issue, which is what about the military capabilities that each country has? We forgot about that, right? We have not invested in that for many, many years, luckily so. But now we find ourselves short of capabilities for that. It's a huge investment demand over the next years, and it's huge demand for technologies to do that. And again, we need time to adjust to it, and we need time to understand. And the approach of, especially of the European politicians, has been too simple. We just make a law, and then everything is going to be sorted out. It doesn't work like this. It's much more complicated than this.
Also in Switzerland, how do you judge the importance of a regulatory framework?
We haven't been that simplistic, which is very good. Although we have a tendency now to catch up, and that's a risk.
What do you think about it?
Well, I think Switzerland has always been successful because we never had an industrial policy, I think, to start with, because we don't have the money accumulation in Bern and the centrality that other countries have. Nonetheless, we have a history of having been the first most electrified country in the world, right? I mean, in Germany, you still have a lot of trains not using electric. In Switzerland, that was kind of done and dusted in the 30s. So I think we have a couple of really great elements for that. So I feel that the dialogue we have between the politicians and the people, I think, leads to more pragmatic solutions. But I think the push towards more electrification, more electricity from water, because we need it, as Mario said, as we go to not just AI, but cars or everything, we need more energy.
Now, in a fast-changing world, it can be hard, as we said already, to keep up with the latest developments, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. Where do you see the next steps? Where's Switzerland?
Well, I think when it comes to technologies, I love, by definition as an entrepreneur, I look for the places where disruptions happen, creative disruption, I love it. I think technology always has been a disruptor. I think it can be in a good way or in a bad way. I think technologies tend to be platforms, and what we make out of it is our choice. We can see this with social media and other elements. I think in general, there is a tendency with technology also to overestimate the short and underestimate the long-term impact. I was an entrepreneur, I'm just give you a year, 2004-05. I tried to explain people that you should put a GPS into a phone and one day it would navigate. We couldn't raise money. I mean, how many of you use navigation in a phone? In 2000, we tried to convince people to put a camera in a phone. They thought we were stupid. So the majority of people can't see where technology can go, right? Because they always judge technology where it is today and don't look at the curves. So, for example, I just look up the number before this session. 125,000 square miles, right, can actually, from a solar perspective, power the entire energy need of the planet. What is 125,000 square miles? It's a fifth of Libya, right? And Libya, there is a lot of desert there. So fundamentally, if we had the right deal, and I think in Switzerland there's this really, I always use it as an example with my American colleague, is the Wasserzins, right? It's the fact that we use, the hydro plants in the mountains. They locally make money, but then the energy companies get the energy. Why don't we do something like this with Africa? Right? So we need to be having courage to do big projects, right? We don't have to bring the energy to Europe. We can do carbon capture in Africa. We can do certain industrial steps that we think we need to do in Germany. Not in Germany anymore. We can do them there. So I think we need to think way beyond our narrow, local political perspective. Then on AI, I just drove 3 weeks ago with Waymo to San Francisco. Autonomous driving. I was in the navigation space for a long time. It's reality. So my view is that in 10 years, you will not have any more passenger cars in San Francisco, in many other metropolitan areas. And even individual mobility will move to shared assets. So I think China is going to lead on that too. Again, from an insurance perspective, who's responsible? China makes it very simple. They test autonomous driving. When it's 50 times better on a statistical basis, they say, let's go. So
where do you see Zurich's role? With artificial intelligence, is this more like a risk or what do you think about it?
Look, I'm born optimistic, so I always see opportunities. Of course, there are lots of risks in AI, and we read about it every day, and we even experience that ourselves. I think there are lots of fantastic opportunities to serve customers better, to understand the data better, to have a better life for ourselves. But we will need to learn and manage how to mitigate the risks.
We need to talk about the Global Risk Report, of course. The Global Risk Report 2024 is a report. It's developed by the World Economic Forum in a collaboration with Zurich and Marsh McLennan. It presents the findings of nearly 1,500 experts, and in this report, climate change is just one of the main risks. What other risks do we have to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, the problem when you talk to insurers, that insurers leave their daily hours with risks. And so they see risks everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Now, there is one risk, though, that I'm very, very much concerned about, and that's cyber. Cyber is enhanced by the fact that we're all connected and we live digital. Now, cyber is not about stealing my identity, which can be not a pleasure, but it has limited impact. Cyber, at the end of the day, is the risk that external forces, governments, terrorists, military people of other organizations can ruin our society, because our society is based on the electricity grid, the water grid, is based on transportation. All these things are cyber vulnerable. They can all be attacked easily, and this happened before. So to me, the thing that we haven't yet fully aligned ourselves is that cyber equals to defense, equals to protection of the society and of the environment in which we live. I mean, we have hundreds of people working on our cyber defenses, and we invest really a ton of money in cyber defenses. But it's useless, it's pointless if governments don't step up, because we can fight against governments. And often on the other side, we don't find, what is the picture in the movies, the little kids in the garage playing with their computers. On the other side, we find military people trained by governments which use cyber as a funding reason for their needs, or use cyber to send messages to other governments and to other societies. So it's a very, very serious threat to all of us, which is not fully understood, especially in Europe, and Europe is not protecting itself. I mean, Switzerland is ahead of Europe. I have regular meetings with the cyber responsible people of Switzerland, and they're way ahead of the other Europeans. But it's a much bigger risks than we understand and then we think about, and we must be aware of it.
So what does it mean for an insurance company like Zurich?
I mean, we don't. We limit. I cannot say we don't, but we limit our cyber offer protection to big corporations, to global players. We fundamentally like to offer cyber to individuals and SMEs because we don't think we can manage it. In the past, when we had cyber events against customers of us, they often started in unknown places where maybe this company had the little office that they almost forgot about, and from there a hacker entered and then went all through the system and paralyzed the organization. That is unmanageable for us. We can't do a risk assessment of this. So if we work with individuals, with SMEs, we can provide them with the risk assessment, we can provide them with the mitigation plan, and we can take the charge if something happens. But with global organization is very, very difficult to do it, if not impossible.
What do you think about the risk of cyber?
Well, it's a form of, I think competition between states, if you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it can go very, very far. And as we digitalize and our infrastructure, we become extremely vulnerable, right? We can see it sometimes, just saw recently when Microsoft had that one issue, or a cyber company had an issue because they were in the kernel, by the way, of Microsoft, which they only could be because the European government forced Microsoft to open up the kernel. So rather complex situations. So I think it's an arms race. And so I'm with Mario. You have to be as good as the hacker to kind of understand the cyber risk. How do you, because it's not a law of big numbers where everybody drives on the street. It's a very different beast when it comes to risks. So very difficult. So I do believe it's a huge risk. And will be used more and more by all actors. So I don't think it's just certain actors in the East. I think they're all using it.
Thank you so far. Maybe we have some questions here in the room. So now it would be the time for it. Sustainability, forest, global risks, anything, anyone? I have one more question. 10, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, actually almost nobody was talking about sustainability. Now everybody is. Where do you think the journey is going?
Where do I think the journey is going? It's a good question. I think at the moment the journey is stalled. I don't think it's going anywhere because there isn't a lot of popular support for the solution to sustainability. I think the journey will continue, however, to move forward. And as I said before, and I think Mikael agree on this, technology is going to help a lot. We need to put the carbon back into the ground, and we need to have technology telling us how to do it. Yes. I don't think we will lose the planet. I'm not in such a drama story. I think we're going to fix it, but it's not what we see today, what's going to happen next.
You said before, politicians, they actually don't understand really. They see the problem, they make the law. So how can we get further there?
You know, for people interested in it, I think there's two great descriptions of a plan. One is by Tesla, it's called the Plan 3. There's a 3-hour video you can watch. The other one is what I love a lot is Speed and Scale, which is coming out of Silicon Valley, where they go for the 10 top things, right? You know, fix agriculture, decarbonize this, do that, and with clear, you know, technology roadmaps and KPIs. I think we need to come a little bit more top down, you know, do a little bit here, a little bit there, it doesn't work. I think when it comes to sustainability, honestly, I think the question of energy is back. You know, we had in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and we all know it in the mid-70s, it started again with the oil crisis. But after the Second World War, energy disappeared as a cost factor, right? Oil in the you know, the Arabian desert was found and created also the car revolution. I think energy is fundamentally wealth. So there's a very great chart that I love in the BP Energy Report, which correlates the Human Development Index with energy. 80% of the planet lives below sustainable energy. So 80% of the planet will move to high energy consumption. So not just AI, we will have a new massive middle class saying, hey, I don't want to live at, just as an example, somebody in Ethiopia is on 200 watts. You know, the comparison, we are about 4,000, and Americans at 10,000, somebody in Qatar is at 15,000. So the differences in energy consumption on the planet, the whole fairness question, who consumes energy and how are we dealing with it, is massive. But I think, you know, back to the carbon capture, the key is in the deserts of Africa.
Well, would anyone like to say something? Maybe we can have a little discussion over there. The lady over there in the middle. We have a microphone for you.
Thank you. Really inspiring, all the positive, solution-oriented comments you have. And I think that's exactly what we're missing. We're missing the dedication of people to actually follow through with a plan because they're all scared of failing. And I think especially, I don't know, in Switzerland, it's not popular to fail, whereas in America, you know, you can run a company to the ground. Yeah, you did it. But I don't know if that would also be part of the problem, that we're not confident and gutsy enough. Also, you were talking about the politicians having their 3-year plan. We have a lot of executives, you have also maybe a 4-year plan. You know, they have their, we have to do this much return on investment, we have to thrive on the rates going up and so on. And so who wants to risk that with something sustainable that I don't know what I'm going to get out of it? So what are your thoughts on that? How can we change that attitude in the executive levels as well in Switzerland?
That's an interesting question.
Hold people accountable for more time. I mean, that's the way I read. You might remember years ago there was this whole discussion, now disappeared, about shareholder or stakeholder interest, right? And I never quite understood it because I don't know what it means, stakeholder interest. I mean, shareholder we have metrics that you all know very well. Stakeholder, I don't know what the metrics are, but the way I read it is about short-term versus long-term. If I'm committed to the long-term, then I can't damage the stakeholders around me because they're going to kill me before I can do that. There is enough recognition over time that I've been damaging, and then I'll be gone. In the short term, the story is very, very different, right? And so if we organize our society, our economy, management, everything for the short term, then we have what we deserve, which is a lot of wrong decisions taken and a lot of mistakes and a lot of wrong people in the wrong jobs. So I just think we need to hold each one of us accountable for longer time and measure what they do. And if we don't do well, replace, but hold people accountable, not just on the short term. Now, U.S. economy, for example, is set in a very different way than ours. It's clearly very short-term oriented. And the Chinese are impressive because, of course, it's the beauty of a dictatorship. You can be very long-term oriented in a dictatorship. You don't have to respond to anybody, and they have a view. I mean, that's why they developed the EV, market industry so much better than we have done, because they've taken a dictatorship view on that. I'm not pushing for dictatorship. Understand me well. So, but this makes everything complicated these days because we have to face also the limits of democracies. How do you ask people to make decisions for the next 25, 30 years, 40 years? What do they understand of that, and how much do they care about it? In Europe, where we're getting older and older. And so how do you have a long-term view in Europe where the majority of the people are going to be soon over 60 years old? So it's part of the complexity of these days. That hold people accountable for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, so I leave Switzerland out for a moment because I think we're doing relatively okay, right? But I think I worry about Europe in the game that we're seeing in the world. And one reason why I went back to do ABB Mobility is, I grew up a few hundred meters from the headquarters, and it's a Swiss company. And when I discussed with the CEO of ABB, I said, look, we will not be an acceptable actor in ABB because you're a dividend stock. Your investors expect from you dividends. We're going to be unruly troublemaker, right? To give you an idea, I'm running a business where we expected to grow by 80%, but we shrink by 30%. Well, which established business has a swing like this? To actually, to have my conversation with the CFO of ABB is challenging. I'm lucky that we were both on the executive board of Nokia, and so we saw difficult times together. So we know this. So that's why we took it out, right? So we took ABB Mobility out and got, $500 million of money from the Singapore State Fund, from the American Just Climate Al Gore. So I learned one thing in life, despite the fact being an engineer, different capital goes for different opportunities, and you need to allocate the right capital. And we're not very good at this in Europe at all, right? Also, what we are allowed, and I say this all the time when I talk to Stefan, and on the investment side, what we're allowed to put into private equity and venture versus, financing governments through bonds. So my point is that we need to look into this. America has a lot of 401k money, right? There's a lot of money out there. Venture is big. Despite the fact that America is short-term from a capitalist perspective, the governments can actually set guardrails in a very long-term perspective. And again, we lost the internet revolution, we lost the smartphone revolution, we might lose the EV revolution, we have already lost most likely the AI revolution. We're just going to work on other people's infrastructure. So in that sense, I said, okay, ABB Mobility, I'm going to make sure that in charging infrastructure, we're not going to lose this. But I cannot build the best chargers in the world without the research lab in Shenzhen. Because of the scale of where they are, they have a supplier network that I just don't have in Europe. So it's high time that we wake up, and I don't think we need dictatorships, but we need a bit more government direction, right, to develop stuff. I always make a joke. We in Europe can barely put GPS satellites into space, and America has 3 privately owned space companies. So they do something better than we do.
Further questions?
Can you hear me?
Of course.
I have a question to Michael Halbherr. E-mobility. You talked about in 10 years on the West Coast, San Francisco, autonomous driving. We know autonomous train systems in certain areas. We do. How about if we go up there, autonomous flying? What's your opinion on that? Is that too big of a thought, or because they are very, very, very well equipped? Actually, is it a psychological topic or is it a technological topic?
It's both. So fundamentally, I want to be clear. Despite my statement about Waymo, I believe that the future of mobility in big cities is public transit. So if people ask me, do you have an EV car? Actually, I don't, right? Because I don't use cars. I use bicycles, trams, and airplanes, too many airplanes. But I think we need mass transit. And because we can't get the volume, cities become denser and denser. We go high, the big cities go high. Individual cars are not going to solve it, right? If you look at the picture of Beijing, you get like 4 rings of highways. And I asked the city planners once, why did you do it? Why didn't you move straight to a different, they said because ownership of a car is freedom and the government wants people to have that. So there's a psychological element of owning a car and going to places. I think this whole Volvo copter and these drone-based things, the energy ratios don't work. They don't work. You can't get the public transit. So at the end of the day, how do we get people from A to B as effective as we can with the lowest energy footprint? That's the goal. And that's a niche. When it comes to aviation, I always think we're too hard on aviation, right? Because you have a starting strip and an end strip, but no roads in between. So when you look at actually the CO2 emissions that go into the infrastructure for aviation, it's quite low, right? That's why when you look at the numbers, it's something we can solve, as I said, with hydrogen and other ways. So I don't think that the answer to mobility is in 3D. Underground, yes, absolutely, right? That's why you can have unconstructed. I'm a bit sad that this, what's it called, Swiss Cargo, has, I thought that's kind of the Swiss stuff to do, right? Kind of cool, we like to build tunnels. So a bit sad because I really believe
we and the Mexicans.
Yes, somehow we like tunnels. There's some other people who do tunnels, but we do great tunnels, right? But I think it would have been great because I think to get that underground would have already solved a lot. And Elon Musk is most likely in 5 years stealing the idea like we did already with the.
We have time for maybe 2 more questions. You would like to ask a question? So we need the microphone, or maybe you need to speak out loud. In the corner. Oh, you were not on, sorry.
At the folk.
Oh, but there.
I like the Libya example, that we produce solar energy in Libya, but it also reminds me a bit of getting Russian gas and getting energy from countries where we do not have a stable regime. Isn't that very tricky? Or do you know any other example than Libya where we maybe could produce solar energy?
Well, my personal opinion is I think Russia seems pretty stable from a government perspective. Whether we like it is a different question. No. I mean, Libya is just an example. I just needed to put the number into perspective. There's lots. I think it's in Ethiopia where they're building this dam on the Nile, right? Yeah. And so the question is, how quickly do they put water into the dam, and what is the damage to the people downstream? What I'm saying is, we need to have maybe a collaboration with some of those African nations, right? When it comes to this, the same way the energy companies had a collaboration with a village in the mountains where they build a dam, right? So I think we can use their space, but there's a lot more desert than Libya. That was just an idea, but I think I mean the Russian gas, of course, is an issue, but the risk was known. Again, we're in the risk business, right?
Yeah. And it was cheap for a reason.
There's another question?
Okay. Self-driven cars. Who is responsible for when there is an accident?
I would say I would say the software company will be. But this will be an interesting matter for the insurance companies in the future. But I would presume that accidents in the future will be software glitch or things that the software did not properly work. And so it will go back to that.
Yeah, again, China, the tests show that the autonomous cars are having 50 times less accidents.
Yeah.
50 times, okay? Then the second thing is, when the autonomous driving started, the Germans all got, excited about it. We don't need, autonomous driving in an inner city at 30 kilometers an hour, right? Is also limiting the impact of accidents and stuff that happens. So again, China is going in a very pragmatic way, right? And some places have exceptions to make sure we can go and test. But what's interesting in China is that the Chinese government wants, because these cars collect a lot of data. And recently Elon Musk was in China and he actually had to agree to share the Tesla data, which he doesn't do in the US. The Chinese said you can't do it if you don't share the data. So the government always has the best data. So all the autonomous driving companies have to feed the data into the master data from the government, and they then have a full database of the system. And again, autonomous driving can help. Actually, when I had to convince Winterkorn to buy a mapping company many years ago, I said, if you have a car that goes around the corner, but your car actually knows that there's an accident around the corner, but you visually can't even see it, you can stop the car. And connected cars can do these things. So I think overall, car driving will become a lot safer. And I'm with Mario, right? The software company, that's why Waymo is Google. They own the cars. They own the service. They don't sell software.
We have a question over here.
Yes, thank you. So we heard about how, in terms of technological progress, we are too much looking at what exists now and not enough on what will exist. So from both of you, I would be interested to hear 10 years down the road, what's your educated guess of what will exist then?
I would guess that we're going to have much more energy supply than we have today, and that we will have developed a lot more sources of energy than we have today. And I would also guess that the demand for energy will grow proportionally. And I would guess that we will become much better than we are today in putting carbon back into the ground. These are the two things that I expect happening. I don't know if you follow the recent development of IT companies, broadly speaking, like Google, Microsoft. Now they start producing energy by themselves. I found this incredibly interesting. So energy is so critical that they don't want to buy it. They want to own it. They own their own energy. I mean, this is something that is it will accelerate further over the next years, because Michael is right. I mean, it's all about energy. We need energy. The world has moved itself with energy creation and then energy use and consumption. Now we don't have enough, and definitely we don't have enough which is clean. So this will be the next development over the next years, all about energy and all about clean energy developments for me.
Where do you see the future?
Let me build on the Google example Mario just made, because you guys manage a lot of money. It's interesting that the world is moving from asset light to asset heavy companies. Google was an asset light company, right? Every search was very light. And they become massive asset intensive companies. So to build the AI clouds or the just the simple cloud companies for the infrastructure that we're using. Just a cloud company as a general concept is going to be about 3 times the size of the automotive markets in the world, to give you an idea. I don't know a European cloud company because these companies have a lot of profit, right? What is the Apple, Google profit? 60, 70, 80 billion a year? Yeah. Right? They pump it straight into building defensive assets, which is the whole chain of energy, the cloud centers in the mountains where it's cool and whatever. So I'm totally with Mario. I think energy is a huge topic. One additional point I want to add is I think where I believe we need a lot of innovation, we'll see a lot of innovation is on battery technologies. I mean, we need to get the energy to places. Battery technologies have to get a lot better. I think this is one of the areas where we see a lot of innovation. On charging speed, I can just give you a rough, I was saying, is there a Moore's law in charging, right? So every 4 years, the charging speed doubles by cars. So I personally believe you won't charge anymore at home in 10 years because you just go out and charge 5 minutes in a public charger and the 11 kilowatts in your basement don't do it. So I think technology will move, and you can see the curves slowly, which means if we now put too much technology of the current generation in, they will be outdated in 5 years, right? So this all has to be done with a moderate way of deployment. But energy is the topic of the future. I'm with Mario.
Thank you both so much, Mario Greco und Michael Halbherr, for your time and food for thought. Und meine Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste, auf unserem virtuellen Waldspaziergang geht's jetzt erstmal Richtung Rastplatz, wo wir draußen erwartet Sie etwas Leckeres zu essen, und wir sehen uns dann später hier wieder um 13 Uhr. Ein gutes Miteinander. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Merci.
Danke vielmals.